Welcome to the Mind Body Couple podcast.
I'm Tanner Murtaugh.
And I'm Ann Hampson.
This podcast is dedicated to helping you unlearn chronic pain and symptoms.
If you need support with your healing, you can book in for a consultation with one of our therapists at painpsychotherapy.ca.
Or purchase our online course at embodicommunity.com to access in-depth education, somatic practices, recovery tools, and an interactive community focused on healing. Links in the description of each episode. Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
Welcome back to the podcast.
Yes.
I had some big parenting wins this week.
So he thinks.
So, I'm a little bit involved. So I'll explain this first. And don't get too upset.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So, we're in the process, mainly Anne, in toilet training.
Yes.
Our daughter.
And I have to say, it's quite a journey. If anyone knows or relates to having young children and toilet training them, it is definitely a journey for the child and the parent.
Yeah, in the final stages.
Mm-hmm.
So last Monday, Anne, home with our daughter.
Yeah.
We're practicing being in underwear instead of pull-ups.
Yeah, so a lot of peeing on the floor is really where we were at.
That night, I come home.
Mm-hmm.
Anne goes out, hang out with your horse.
Yes.
Horsey time.
Yes.
And me and my son and my daughter are doing like tickle fights. We're like playing in the hallway. She just gets up, goes to the toilet, goes to the bathroom.
Which is amazing because I don't think that's really ever happened before in our home. And so I get home and Tanner's like, something amazing happened. And he tells me about it. And then he's like, it was because of me.
To be clear, I said I have a certain presence.
Yes. Yes. And let's be fair, I have been working on this for months and like grinding it out with our daughter for months. Tanner, once in a while, is encouraging them to maybe sit on the potty. And now he's taking all the glory. So I think all of the mothers listening to this probably are just hopefully siding with me and super angry.
I have a feeling they're siding with you.
I bet. Because this happens to be kind of like something that happens with us where I'll do all the work, but Tanner will take credit. Right?
It's the presence.
Yeah.
And not
claims
and it wasn't
presence.
and it was so unfortunate for you because then 2 days later the same thing happened.
Yes. Tanner's presence allowed her to go sit on the potty.
But I am joking. You're doing a lot of the hard work.
Mm-hmm. I feel like also he's just saying this for the sake of the podcast.
I'm not. It's unfortunate. It's clicking in our brain when you're not around.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's what we've been working on for the last week. Our topic is a bit different than that, and I think we'll kind of switch gears and head to that.
Mm-hmm.
What we want our topic to be today is the idea that embodiment is the key to healing chronic pain and symptoms.
Yes. And so we're going to move through this. We're going to define it. We're going to explain what exactly embodiment is. Because it's kind of a trendy term nowadays, right? They're embodied. Like it's a trendy Instagram term that's thrown out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the term. I think there's a lot of utility.
Totally.
And we're going to explain what this is and how it can help people heal chronic pain, chronic symptoms. I have 2 stories for you. Both around
Are they where you're taking all the credit away from other people?
They're not.
Okay.
They're not.
Just checking.
Wow, you're really just...
Sorry. Well, I feel, No, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry, they don't involve anything about me taking credit.
Okay.
I promise. 2 stories, similar topic, both involving scary emails from the CRA. So the CRA,
those are scary stories.
Yeah, the CRA is like the government tax organization that when you run a business, you're interacting with the CRA. Like in the US, this is the IRS. Mm-hmm. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a story from many years ago when I first started the company about Tanner, myself, not being embodied.
Okay.
I got this letter. They always send them at like 4 a.m. This email. It's terrible. It's so mean.
So you like wake up to it with your morning
coffee. You wake up and you like open your email and you just get the CRA being like, you messed something up. You're going to owe a lot of money, or I can't remember what exactly was written. Instantly, sheer panic. Because I had never really dealt with the CRA.
Yes.
I'm panicked. I'm having fear thoughts. I'm like, what if I
these emails are very confusing to understand as well.
And this is me not being embodied. Yes, I was feeling emotions. Yes, I was feeling panic, but I was lost in my mind trying to problem solve, figure it out, and just lost, just disconnected from my body instantly. And this went on for a day or so until I got a hold of my accountant.
Okay, so to reiterate, this is an example of you not being embodied, even though you're flooded with emotions and sensations, but you're kind of up and lost in your mind about them in kind of like panic.
Yeah. And I'm disconnected. Like there's no sense of safety in my body as this is taking place.
Okay.
So, and we're going to talk about what embodiment actually is, but I wasn't really dropping in. I was trying to avoid at all costs what I was feeling.
Yes.
Similar story, a couple of years later, more recently, where
again the CRA is contacting you.
Again, CRA,
always contacting you, Tanner.
I know, and at this point, I'm a little more regulated. It's a couple of years in, I've run a business. Our second business has started at this point. Like I'm used to this, right? So I will give context. Get the CRA email 4 a.m. again.
Oh yes,
of course, drinking my coffee, and when it hits, I remember there was anxiety and panic.
Right.
But there wasn't a feeling of me trying to run away from it. There was a feeling of like, oh, this is a scary email. I'm okay to feel scared right now. And did I have thoughts? Yes, there was thoughts around problem solving, sending this to my accountant, getting this sorted. But I was still very connected. Like I was in the present moment with how I was feeling, with my thoughts.
Were you slowing down now, actually like spend time with how you're feeling and like notice and be aware of that?
Yeah, so very quickly, like I have certain breathing patterns that I'm doing as I'm doing this. And again, I'm not using the breathing to run away how I'm feeling. I'm using it as this, as we're going to talk about later in this episode, the safety signal that allows me to stay connected to my body and to the present moment.
Well, an interesting, Tanner, because the first example you talked about, you were just going into this panic response. You shut up into your kind of your head and your own mind and like really thinking, and you weren't really paying attention to that physical sensations. You weren't spending time with, and you mentioned avoiding. You're avoiding that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what happens a lot with people.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about this a bit, but embodiment, it can occur even when you're feeling unpleasant things. Like we can stay in our body with it and not be running away.
Well, and I think this is a good time to talk about the definition of embodiment. And so when we think of it, we think of like being deeply connected to our physical felt sense. And so that might mean body sensations, different senses. That might be like movement or perceptions, emotions, or maybe our nervous system state. And that kind of awareness and moving towards it, like you described, so spending time with it, letting that be information for us. When we want to be embodied, say, that would be living life through these sensations instead of always caught up in your head. So I like your examples, Tanner, of the second one. You're allowing yourself to be really in tune with that, what those sensations were doing for you, and allowing them to breed some sort of safety, even though they were difficult sensations. And so you weren't running away. That would be a very embodied response.
And for a lot of people, we aren't embodied.
Yes.
And we're not taught this. It's not modeled for us. And so it's quite a new concept.
Well, and I think like with your examples, Tanner, when we're afraid, we feel fear and we feel those sensations, but we often rely on our thinking mind to get us through. And so we shoot up there, which you did, and we ignore all of the physical sensations going on in our body. It's like they become secondary, even though they are driving us to panic too.
And one thing that I see happen with embodiment, and I liked when you described the definition as living life through your body and nervous system, right?
Right.
Because our society, most people know what mindfulness is, right? being able to attend to things inside, the breath, sensation, being able to attend with our senses. And what I see people do, this is so common, is people will do their 15 minutes of mindfulness practice.
Right.
And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's important. But then they spend the rest of the day in their head thinking, not connected at all. And so, this long-lasting day-by-day feeling of embodiment, like we need to have this kind of informal connection throughout time, not in your 15-minute practice once a day only.
Okay, so it's almost like a way of, I guess, a way of living, like we said, or a way of being throughout your day. Like, can I have a relationship maybe with my thinking mind, but also a relationship with my sensations going on in my body as well?
Yeah, and when we talk about why we aren't embodied, there's a number of different reasons. For some of this is just, family patterns that have been learned or social norms.
What would be like an example of something that was learned, maybe?
Something really common that, I learned from my dad, which is not a negative thing. When there's a problem, what do? You problem solve. You think about it.
Yes.
You figure out a solution. You act.
Right.
And the problem is like a lot of times we're cutting ourselves off neck up.
Yes.
We're not taking any cues off our body. This is a purely intellectual thing. And this happens, this is, society has kind of built us like this. Because when you think about another reason you're not embodied is this intellectualizing. We really value that in our society.
Yeah.
Of how smart are you? How good can you think things through? We kind of pump living in our mind.
Yeah.
And so as a result, we're kind of at a disadvantage right from the start because this is what we're taught. The second thing that happens is this pathologizing of emotions or expressing of emotions. We're taught that anything that isn't pleasant inside is dangerous and to not notice it or attend to it.
Right. And so the tendency then is just to avoid. And so I think with what happened with your example is you felt really unpleasant sensations, emotions, and fears, and you're just kind of avoid, go into problem solving. But someone once told me that our emotions all have to go somewhere. And so even if we avoid them and we don't kind of listen to them, they're still impacting us in some way. They're still trying to inform us.
Yeah. And these last three that I want to talk about really make sense of why we avoid embodiment, being in our body in any way. When we have chronic nervous system dysregulation, which is a lot of unpleasant sensations. When we have pain or physical symptoms, or we have trauma, all of these create a lot of unpleasantness inside. So why would we want to attend to that?
Yeah, it's super natural to start avoiding, moving away, to shoot up into our minds and go into fix it or problem solving type mode, especially when it comes to really difficult sensations going on in our body.
Yeah, but when we want to work through trauma, pain and symptoms, dysregulation, there needs to be this slow, gradual attention, connection to the body, and creating safety with it.
Well, yeah, and that brings us to kind of understanding why develop embodiment. And you said it right there, Tanner. Embodiment heals neuroplastic pain and symptoms. We need to have a relationship with our body, our sensations, understand our nervous system states and what's going on in there to create safety with those sensations and within our body. And a lot of time when I'm meeting with people, I talk with them about having a new relationship with their body, one that can breed safety and kind of connection and make us feel okay to spend time inside of our bodies.
Yeah. And it's a really important piece to just understand that this is a big part of the solution.
Yeah.
When it comes to healing our chronic pain, chronic symptoms. One thing that I hear people say a lot as I bring up this concept in session or various things, even on social media, I had a few people comment on this recently. I'm already embodied.
Yes.
I constantly feel pain or symptoms. Of course I'm embodied. I can feel them.
Yeah, which also, again, makes sense.
Yeah.
And is very true. And so those sensations are very much present. Again, I like going back to Tanner's examples because he was feeling those sensations, but not tending to them in the first example.
Yeah, and it's a common assumption we make. But it's important to understand, like, usually when we feel pain, symptoms, emotions, dysregulation, our response is one of these two things.
Yes.
First, this could be hyper focus on sensations, whether it's like, fight, flight, freeze, shutdown energy. We are using this to almost like laser focus, hawk mode, like lock onto them. And people test, right? Like you're testing if your pain and symptoms are still there.
Right.
You're tracking them. You're trying to physically fix them, change them. And a whole host of unpleasant emotions start to occur as a result of what we're feeling inside.
Right. And this hyperfocus, yes, would be kind of moving towards the emotions or sensations, but not in a safe way, not in a way that kind of allows us to have that relationship of like, what is my sensations telling me, or that connectedness.
And there's a desired outcome. When people are like hyper focused, they're trying to control them to make their pain, symptoms, difficult emotions go down.
Okay.
Like there's like, it's not true just connection, creating safety with it.
And so it's driven by fear still.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, the second thing that people will commonly do is just avoidance. Shift away from any type of feeling inside that feels unpleasant. Move into thinking, right? This could be thinking about symptoms, thinking about problems in your life. For some people, they continue to research ideas or diagnosis of their pain or symptoms. And there's basically this sense of just trying to distract yourself.
Yes. And look, I'm all for strategic distraction when we used kind of in a way that where it's helpful. But this would be an idea of completely distracting and not tending to them in emotions or body sensations at all.
Yeah. And I think you bring up a fair point. Like no one's not going to always be embodied. Like it's not possible. Like we all need some avoidance sometimes. But if you're doing one of these two things or alternating between them, whether it's hyper focus or avoidance, and that's typically a response to sensations inside, that's not embodiment. That's not what we're talking about it. And again, I don't want people to be critical of this. I did both of these things.
Right.
It makes sense. This is the normal human response that we have when something feels unpleasant.
Well, and so do I. I do those things as well. And so again, I like that you say that it's kind of a normal human response. It's very natural to do this. What we're talking about is trying to kind of shift of like, okay, can I respond in a way that isn't about fear or driven by fear to my body and my sensations?
Yeah, and I think there's been some cool developments in neuroscience around this, of the neuroscience research that shows us what low embodiment looks like in the brain. When we experience things like chronic pain, chronic symptoms, the fMRI brain scans show us that we have decreased activation in areas that sense the body. So like areas that actually sense the body decrease. What actually increases in contrast is activation in areas responsible for emotions and memory. So it's an interesting idea around some of this because this shows us that our brain isn't functioning in the usual way that safely senses our body. Instead, what happens to people is they get overloaded. They get overloaded by these difficult emotions, by memory informing danger. And this is why symptoms start to be generated. And
so if I was listening to this and struggling with chronic pain and relating to what you just said, it might be really scary to think of trying to become embodied then.
Yeah.
If we're experiencing that, Tanner.
It isn't an instant fix. And I think that's the important piece to understand about this, is it's going to take some time to reconnect with the body. But the good news is using embodiment practices, we can wake up the present moment body sensing parts of our brain. So things like embodiment practices, somatic practices, allow us to take neuroplasticity essentially into our own hands. And we can start to retrain the brain and create this sense of embodiment over time.
Yeah, and that might start really small. Sometimes it might just be pausing and checking in. Okay, what's happening in my body? Can I approach that with a bit of lightness instead of fear? And if that's all we can do for 1 second, that's a start. So it's like a gradual kind of working on it of like, okay, can I move towards what's going on and being aware of my body?
Yeah, I like what you said there. Essentially what we're trying to do, and we're going to talk about the two principles of embodiment in a second here, but we're trying to direct this curious, mindful attention to our body again.
Yeah, and that might be emotions. That might be our pain and symptoms that we're feeling. That might be dysregulation that's bringing different kind of sensations going on. And so it is that curiosity with anything going on in our body in that physical sense.
Yeah. And over time, this will help your brain reappraise signals coming from the body. Because we understand with neuroplastic pain and symptoms, there's miscommunication going on.
Yeah.
Safe signals are coming up. Say you have back pain, safe signals are coming up from your back, but your brain, because it's been stuck in the state of danger, it's firing off pain. And so by doing embodiments, by reconnecting to sensations, it helps our brain reappraise, oh, the body's actually safe.
Yes.
We don't need to fear it anymore. We can drop into it.
Yeah.
So let's move into discussing the two principles of embodiment.
Yeah. The first principle is exposure. And so I know we've talked about exposure in different ways on this podcast often. The idea of exposure is to overcome any fear we might need to expose to it. Mm-hmm. And so a good example I like to share with people is a simple phobia. If we have a phobia, say, of flying or heights, and we want to overcome that, we would gradually expose ourselves to maybe the fear, the anxiety, what's going on in our bodies, and slowly move towards trying to kind of get on that airplane. The more we expose to it, expose to the anxiety, expose to getting closer to that airplane, the safer we should start to feel in time. If we avoid it, that increases fear and dysregulation in the body. And so we want to learn to approach safely to retrain the brain. That would be the work we would do with a phobia. That is the same with different sensations going on in our bodies. That would be the same with emotions. And so if those are things we typically avoid, we would also want to overcome fear around those sensations as well.
Yeah, and when we understand chronic pain, chronic symptoms, we often have this dysregulated response to them.
Yes.
Just like a phobia of flying.
Yes.
And so that's what we're doing is we're dropping in, we're getting exposure. And the one thing I was thinking
actually, this is a great, are you thinking about your, when you went ziplining?
Oh, yeah, that was terrible.
Sorry, I just threw that in there because Tanner has a fear of heights.
I have a terrible fear of heights. Real quick story. Terrible fear of heights. Mm-hmm. I can go on airplanes. Like, I get nervous.
You get nervous, though.
I do get nervous, fear. Yeah.
But kind of like what I just shared, Tanner, the more you've gone...
Easier it is.
Yeah.
Like now, I get nervous. My hands get sweaty when we're taking off. But outside of that, like I don't overthink about it anymore. Because I've had enough exposure. But I had this really big exposure where it went too far. So years back, my friend had a bachelor party.
Yeah.
And they wanted to go ziplining. And I knew about this months before.
Oh, yeah. He would talk to me about it in panic months before.
So I had a choice. And it was a tough choice. I had the choice of either I go ziplining and I face this really big fear, or I don't go ziplining and I get made fun of by the rest of the guys for the rest of the trip. These are my options. And my friends are pretty nice, but they would razz me about it for sure. So I decided to go. First two, I was good to go.
Yeah.
But after the second one, and the problem with ziplining, once you're gone, you're stuck on the line. Like you're going through the whole track.
Yeah.
And the next ones were all on these platforms, like nailed to trees, like hundreds of feet up. By the end, I was like almost non-responsive.
Yeah.
Like I was just like getting pushed by my friends. And so we have to be careful with exposure because that was way outside of what I could tolerate.
Well, so that wouldn't be gradual. So, your phobia of heights, there's ziplining, you kind of like threw yourself to the wolves there too far. And so when we start to move towards things that we're afraid of or things that maybe we're not used to, so think sensations, or we're trying to kind of change relationship with them and create safety, it has to be gradual. We have to kind of ease into it.
Yeah. And this kind of leads us into our second principle of embodiment.
Right.
which is safe connection.
Mm-hmm.
Coming home to the body with a sense of safety.
And so back to the ziplining experience, how would have that been better for you to create that in a gradual way where you had some amount of safety there?
If there had just been the 2 zip lines, and I could have stopped then, that would have been a perfect amount. I've thought about this many times over the years. It would have been a perfect amount. I probably would have gone and done some breath work, calmed myself down. It would have been a healing win. It turned into a disaster because there was like 9 in a row and I couldn't tolerate that much.
For someone then trying to kind of connect to the sensations in their body, what would be, like, and everyone's different, but a starting place like that then?
So you have to find like how much time you can tolerate being in your body, because what we're touching on here is more time doesn't equal better result.
Right. Yeah.
Like for some people attending to their pain or symptoms, they can only tolerate like 30 seconds to a minute.
Yes.
For other people I've worked with, they can drop in for 10, 15 minutes and be okay. Because, you know, you're doing the exposure, but you need enough safety. You need one foot in safety and connection as you do exposures, because otherwise we just disconnect.
Well, and that's a really good comment, Tanner, because I think it's not uncommon that I hear of like, well, I need to do this for 10 minutes or 20-minute practice. And I know like that doesn't necessarily mean that kind of embodiment that we're talking about.
No, like it almost becomes so overwhelming to people that they disconnect, like my zipline experience.
Yeah.
You just click off. And we don't want to get there because at that point, the exposures become too much and there's not enough safety and connection. You actually think of them almost like a scale, side by side. They need to balance out. Like you want the exposure to attend to things that are unpleasant, but you need enough safety on board.
Yes.
And so as you're doing the exposure to create this safe connection, you want to be curious, observe your experience very much in the present moment, right? That connection is key, as we're talking about. You're bringing awareness to your thoughts, physical sensations, these attitudes that Kabat-Zinn often talks about, like non-striving, like no desired outcome as you're doing it, having a sense of compassion, acceptance for what is there, trust that you can tolerate this.
Well, and I really like that you say those 3, especially when we think of connecting with the sensations around emotions that we might have, of bringing in that compassion and acceptance.
Yeah. And in our approach to create safety while attending to pain, symptoms, emotions, nervous system state, we not only focus on the unpleasant, like don't get me wrong, we need that. We need the exposure to the unpleasant, face what we fear. But we can also create safety by focusing on what we call safety signals. And I'll list them here. And I'll explain some of my YouTube channel of how people can access some of this for free. But in our approach, we talk about breath work, present moment sensing, like sight, sound, taste, touch, smell. We do some different tapping or massage routines to help people. This could be safe self-talk, like cognitive messages, reminding yourself that you're safe to be with the sensations. It could be visualization, like visualizing a happy person, place, memory, something that calms you. And it's also savoring the pleasant sensations within. And essentially what we're doing with people is we're giving them exposure, and if the exposure becomes too much, we shift to a safety signal.
Yeah.
Like maybe they shift to attend to the sounds around them or the lack of sounds, and that starts to calm things down, ease things up. And then we shift back to what's unpleasant with it.
Yeah.
So we're going back and forth to keep someone in their body while having a sense of safety and connection. And so on my YouTube channel, the link is in the description of this podcast episode. If you go to the meditation section on my main channel YouTube page, there are endless practices.
Yeah.
There's lots of safety signal practices that people can try out. So you can really get started with this for free. Our digital course, if people want kind of the upgraded version of a whole lot of practices, I think there's like 60 plus somatic practices, brain retraining practices in there. People can check that out too. The link is in the description of this video as well.
Yeah. Well, and I like this. And it kind of makes me think of like our story about our daughter, because in some way she's on a journey towards kind of becoming embodied as well and understanding her body and what it's telling
and
her
signals,
to.
right?
Yeah.
And it needs to be gradual.
And it's a journey.
It's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey as well. And so, again, we want to highlight that this is a journey of like, we don't just wake up embodied one day of like feeling like, oh, I am, feeling safe and connected to my body. It's a journey and a practice. And for kids and for my daughter, often supported by her mother.
There you go. And my healing presence.
No. But
all right. Well, thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you for listening.
And we'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week. Thanks for listening. For more free content, check out the links for our YouTube channel, Instagram, and Facebook accounts in the episode description.
We wish you all healing.